Ladies and gentlemen, the most brutal truth you need to hear if you're stuck on an avoidant ex is this: they don't just wake up one morning, feel a wave of nostalgia, and come running back in a straight line. Before they step toward you again, they are quietly, secretly testing you. Not with big dramatic moves, but with distant silence, timing, and tiny crumbs of contact. And what they're really testing is not how much you love them, because they already know that. They're testing whether coming back means walking into a calmer, safer version of you, or being dragged straight back into the same emotional storm that made them run in the first place. This is the part nobody tells you. When the relationship ended, both of your nervous systems went into threat mode, but in completely different directions. You probably went into protest. You wanted answers, closure, conversation, repair. You wanted to talk it through, fix it, understand it. Your system reaches for connection when it feels danger. The avoidant system reaches for distance. Their mind says, I can't breathe, I need space, I need to think. So they pull back, not just to get away from you, but to get away from the emotional intensity of the whole situation. That's the first point where the silent testing begins. They watch how you respond to their retreat. They are not sitting there with a clipboard, consciously grading you. It's subtler than that. They're paying attention to whether your love feels like a tidal wave they'll drown in if they step closer again. Do you blow up their phone, send long essays, threaten, beg, oscillate between "I hate you" and "please come back" within the same day? Do you make their silence the center of your entire existence? To you, that's raw pain spilling over, and it's understandable. To them, filtered through years of fearing emotional responsibility, it reads like a preview of what coming back will feel like: heavy, pressured, intense. Their question isn't, do they love me? Their question is, if I return, will I be swallowed by this energy again? At the same time, they are noticing something else. Do you have a life without them? Do you still show up for work, for friends, for your health, for your routines? Or do you collapse around the breakup and orbit their absence like it's the only thing in your universe? An avoidant already doubts their capacity to be anyone's emotional anchor. When they see that your sense of self can vanish the moment they pull away, their fear isn't, wow, they really care. Their fear is, if I go back, I might become responsible for holding this entire person together. That is the storm they are afraid of re-entering. Not your feelings, but the emotional reliance they imagine will attach to them if they reopen the door. So when I say they secretly test you, what I mean is that the time after the breakup is not neutral. It is data gathering. They are gathering proof, consciously and unconsciously, about whether you'll react from your wound or from your wisdom. Whether your love is paired with self-respect or fused with self-abandonment. Whether you can hurt without turning them into the sole regulator of your pain. And those answers tell them more about whether it's safe to come back than any words you said while you were still together. This is where your power comes in, because most people think the test is, how much can I show them I still want them, when the real test is, how much can I show them I can hold myself? You don't pass their silent test by performing calmness or pretending you don't care. You pass it by actually learning to ground yourself, by letting the breakup hurt and still choosing your own life, by resisting the urge to turn every pang of missing them into a message they now have to carry. The avoidant who is capable of growth is not looking for someone who needs nothing. They're looking for someone whose needs don't come wrapped in constant emotional chaos. So no, your avoidant ex doesn't just come back. They circle, they watch, they test. They pay attention to how you handled the distance they created, because that's the best predictor of what their future with you might feel like. And whether you realize it or not, in the silence after the breakup, you are already answering the question they're too afraid to ask out loud. If I step toward you again, will I be walking into healing or back into the storm? Ladies and gentlemen, the second keynote is the distance test, and this is the part almost everyone fails because they don't even know the exam has started. The moment an avoidant ex pulls away, breaks up, or needs space, your nervous system and theirs go in opposite directions. You want to move closer, they want to move further. You're craving conversation, closure, reassurance. They are craving air, quiet, and the feeling of not being emotionally responsible for anyone for a while. And while you're in that raw, panicked state wondering what to say, what to do, how to fix it, their nervous system is already watching you from a distance to answer one question. If I ever come back, will I be walking into a calmer version of this person or into a permanent emotional emergency? That's the test. It's not about whether you love them. They already know you do. It's about how you handle the space they created. When the breakup hits, if your first reaction is to blow up their phone, send long essays, show up uninvited, stalk their social media, call from different numbers, or flip between "I hate you" and "I can't live without you, you're not crazy." But to an avoidant who already fears being swallowed by someone else's emotions, it confirms their worst story. If I let this person close to me again, I'll be responsible for all of this intensity. They're not analyzing each word the way you are. They're feeling the weight of your emotional dependency, the way your entire energy says, "I cannot regulate myself unless you come back." And to a nervous system wired to protect its own autonomy at all costs, that feels like danger, not romance. On the other hand, when distance happens and you do something radically different, when you let yourself grieve without turning them into your only life raft, you send a completely different message. You might still cry, shake, talk to friends, journal, walk at 2 a.m. But you don't chase like they're oxygen. You don't make their silence the center of your universe. You don't keep forcing conversations they clearly aren't available for. You might reach out once or twice with clean, short messages, but when they don't respond or they stay cold, you don't keep pounding on a locked door. You step back and start anchoring in your own life, and make no mistake, they notice. They notice that you didn't explode all over their phone. They notice you didn't turn their withdrawal into a performance of rage or begging. They notice that, yes, you're hurt, but you're not handing them your entire nervous system and saying, "Here, fix me." That doesn't mean they clap or come running back immediately. Often they stay quiet. But in that quiet, their system is logging data. Maybe if I ever talk to this person again, it won't destroy both of us. Maybe they don't need me to be their emotional parent. Maybe love with them won't mean losing myself. The distance test is also about whether you keep your own center. Do you still eat, sleep, work, show up to your life, lean on your friends, move your body, touch your dreams? Or do you make your entire existence about decoding their silence, checking their last scene, obsessing over their stories, asking everyone what every tiny move means? When your life collapses around them, it tells an avoidant ex, "If I come back, I'm not just coming back to a relationship, I'm becoming this person's emotional spine." And they already fear they can't hold that. When your life bends, hurts, struggles, but doesn't shatter, it tells them, "This person loves me, but they also know how to stand on their own legs." That is a completely different level of safety. Passing the distance test doesn't mean being ice, cold, and pretending you never cared. It means you grieve with dignity. You resist the urge to prove your worth through constant pursuit. You let the breakup be real, and you choose to take that pain and invest it into your own healing, not into endless attempts to drag them back before either of you is ready. And here's the twist: you're not doing this to impress them. You're doing this because this version of you is healthier for you. If they are growth ready, this new energy will feel like an invitation instead of a threat. If they're not, your groundedness will protect you from running back into the same cycle at the first sign of a breadcrumb. The distance test is where they silently ask, "Will I drown if I come closer again?" And you quietly answer, not with words, but with how you treat yourself in their absence. Ladies and gentlemen, the third truth is the one that happens in silence when you think nothing is happening at all. You call it no contact. They experience it as a window, and inside that window, a hidden verdict is being formed about you, about the relationship, about whether coming back to you will feel like walking into emotional pressure or emotional stability. That verdict is not written by what you post on social media or the one message you drafted 20 times and never sent. It's written by how you live, breathe, and hold yourself when they are no longer available to regulate your emotions. When an avoidant pulls away, they're not just creating distance from you, they're creating distance from the version of themselves they were inside the relationship. They're trying to see clearly. They want to remember what it feels like to be in their own head without constantly scanning someone else's emotional weather. So while you might think, no contact just means we're not speaking, their nervous system is quietly asking, "If I return, what am I returning to? A calmer climate or the same storm that made me run?" Your reaction to that space answers that question long before words are exchanged. If in that no contact period your entire emotional life collapses around them, they feel it, even if they're not watching every move. You might not be texting, but maybe you're posting to provoke a reaction, checking their accounts obsessively, asking mutual friends about them every day, measuring your worth against what they do or don't do online. The energy behind all of that is loud. It says, "My stability depends on you. My calm depends on you. My future depends on you." To you, that's heartbreak. To an avoidant, whose core fear is being emotionally responsible for another human being's entire nervous system, it reads as pressure. It confirms the old story that love equals suffocation, that getting close means becoming the permanent shock absorber for someone else's anxiety. So even if they miss you, even if they think about you often, Even if they feel that tug to check up on you, this hidden verdict starts forming. If I go back, I'll drown. But when no contact looks different, the verdict shifts. When they look up and see that, yes, you're hurting, but you're also still moving, something else registers. You're going to work. You're with friends. You're at the gym. You're trying new things. You're not erasing the relationship, but you're not erasing yourself either. You're not sending coded messages. You're not lashing out online. You're not building your entire identity around being the one who got left. You're allowing your heart to break without making them the only medicine that can heal it. That doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're anchored. And an anchored person feels very different to an avoidant nervous system than a drowning one. They also pay attention to how you handled the last interactions before the silence. Did you cling to the last text like it was the final rope off a cliff? Or did you express your truth and then let the rope go? Did you scream and threaten, or did you eventually say, if this is truly what you want, I'll respect it and focus on myself now? That emotional posture lingers in their memory. When they scroll through their mind and revisit how things ended, they're not just replaying the content of your words, they're replaying the energy. Was it chaotic, desperate, punishing, or was it painful but clear? That memory becomes part of the hidden verdict too. No contact is also the space where they watch for evidence of self-respect. Do you accept crumbs if they do reach out casually, or do you require substance? Do you break your own boundaries the second they appear, or do you respond with warmth and restraint? Even your silence when they test you with a half-hearted hey is part of this unseen evaluation. Because your response or lack of response shows them whether you've grown into someone who can hold a standard, or whether you're still willing to be emotionally available for someone who is relationally uncertain. If you rush to emotionally move back in at the smallest hint of attention, the verdict trends toward nothing has really changed. If you interact like an adult with a full life, the verdict shifts toward this might actually be safer now. Here's what makes this so important for you. You think the story of your future with them will be written when they finally text, call, or show up at your door. But in their mind, much of that story is already written long before they act. They're paying attention to the version of you that exists without them. Are you grounded or spinning? Are you building or just waiting? Are you honoring the breakup as real or treating it like a pause button until they come to their senses? That is the hidden verdict of no contact. It's not about pretending you're fine. It's about proving to yourself first, and to them second, that you can feel deeply and still stand. Because for an avoidant ex, the only way coming back can ever feel truly possible is if your life, in their absence, proves one thing they've never fully believed: loving you won't mean losing themselves. The fourth keynote is where so many people hand their power away without realizing it, because this is where the avoidant ex doesn't knock on the front door and say, I want to try again. They crack the window just an inch to see what rushes in. This is the soft contact test. It looks innocent, a hey, a meme, a random reel, a reaction to your story, a simple have you been, dropped into your world after weeks or months of silence. Your heart hears trumpets. Your nervous system explodes. It feels like the moment you've been waiting for. But for an avoidant, this is rarely just a sweet comeback. It's a thermometer. They're checking the emotional temperature without stepping fully into the room. They want to know, are you still where they left you? Will you drop everything and emotionally sprint back for crumbs? Will you ignore the breakup and the pain the moment they offer the smallest sliver of attention? The reason this test is so powerful is because it hits you right where you're weakest, longing and hope. You've replayed conversations in your head, imagined apologies, dreamed of seeing their name pop up again. When it finally happens, your system doesn't think strategically, it just wants relief. So the impulse is to answer like your whole body has been starving and someone just handed you food. Paragraphs pour out, old jokes, deep talks. You feel compelled to prove that you're still the same person, still available, still ready to understand them, still ready to pick up exactly where you left off if they'll only keep writing. But this is where you need to understand what's actually being measured. They're not only looking at your words, they're feeling your energy. Do you respond as someone who has grown, or someone who has been waiting on standby for them to flip a switch? If you answer that soft contact with intensity, you show them that the dynamic hasn't changed. They're still the emotional center, you're still the pursuer. If you go straight into relationship talk after one hey, if you gush about how much you miss them, if you pour out your heart without them offering anything solid, you are teaching them exactly how little they need to invest to have deep access to you again. That might feel like love to you, but to an avoidant, it reinforces their original fear. One small step toward you equals a tidal wave. One text from them pulls you fully back into attachment. That kind of reaction doesn't make them think, yes, this is safe. It makes them think, if I properly re-engage, I'm going to be responsible for managing all of this again. Responding differently doesn't mean acting fake, cold, or distant. It means you let your growth show. When they send that soft contact, you breathe before you answer. You remember that this is a check-in, not a proposal. You respond with warmth but not desperation. A simple, "Hey, I've been good, keeping busy, how are you?" carries a completely different weight than an emotional monologue. Your words are light, but your self-respect is heavy. You don't ignore the past, but you're not barreling straight into it either. You let the conversation unfold slowly instead of rushing to define everything in one night, because your body is terrified of losing the chance. You show that you have a life now, that you are not sitting in the exact emotional spot they left you in, frozen in time and waiting to be unfrozen by their attention. They'll also be watching what you do with your availability. Do you suddenly become on, call again, answering instantly at any hour, canceling your own plans, staying up late to talk whenever they decide to message? Or do you respond in a way that reflects a real, full life? Not in a game-playing way, but in a genuinely, I have things going on, way. When you don't contort your schedule around their tiny effort, you communicate something that makes a deep impression on a nervous system like theirs. I care about you, but my world doesn't pause every time you blink. That's not indifference. That stability is what they didn't trust before. The soft contact test is also about whether you've learned to protect your own heart. One, hey, does not erase a breakup. One meme does not equal accountability. One check-in does not mean they've done the introspection and growth required to build something different. When you respond like it does, you betray yourself. When you allow the conversation to stay light at first, you give yourself time to observe. Do they keep showing up, or do they retreat the moment they feel you leaning in? Do they ask about your life or only talk about themselves? Do they ever bring up what happened, or do they act like the pain never existed? A soft contact is not an answer, it's a beginning. And you are allowed to hold on to that perspective even while your heart is excited. The real power in this keynote is understanding that the soft contact test isn't just their test of you, it's your test of you. Can you feel hope without surrendering your standards? Can you allow a door to crack open without racing through it before you've checked whether the room has even changed? Can you respond as the version of you who has spent time healing, not as the version of you who still believes any kind of attention is worth abandoning yourself for? When you pass that test, you send a message louder than any words. If you want back into my life, it will require more than a casual hello. It will require consistency, clarity, and courage. I'm open, but I'm no longer available for crumbs. And that message, whether they can rise to meet it or not, is the one that finally puts your heart back in your own hands. The fifth keynote is the moment that decides whether this story becomes a healed second chance or a replay of the same heartbreak wearing new clothes. Because once an avoidant ex has tested your reaction to distance and soft contact, the final silent exam is all about your boundaries when they really start coming back into your world. This is the boundaries test, and it usually doesn't show up as some big, dramatic conversation. It shows up as familiar patterns sneaking in through the side door. They start messaging more consistently, calling a bit, flirting again, maybe suggesting hanging out, maybe even getting physically close. But notice what's missing: clarity. They talk to you like a partner but hesitate to call it a relationship. They lean on you for emotional support, but avoid taking responsibility for how they left things last time. They slide back into late-night calls, private jokes, intimacy, and "I miss you" vibes without openly committing to doing this differently. And while your heart wants to scream, "We're back," your nervous system remembers what it cost you the first time to live in that gray zone. This is where they are silently asking, will you accept the same emotional deal as before, my access to you, without the structure that keeps you safe? And your response here tells them everything they need to know about how much you've really changed. If, in this stage, you let them have all the old privileges, your time, your body, your emotional labor, your listening ear, while they tiptoe around accountability and commitment, you're teaching them that nothing substantial has shifted. You're saying, without words, you can come back on your terms and I will meet you there, even if it costs me my peace again. An avoidant who is not ready to grow will gladly accept this arrangement because it gives them familiarity, comfort, and connection without demanding the kind of consistent effort that triggers their fear of responsibility. But the deeper tragedy is what it does to you. Your anxiety wakes up again. You start reading into every delayed reply. You wonder what you are to them. You fear asking for clarity in case you ruin it. So you shrink your needs, you silence your questions, you become careful instead of honest. The cycle is already back, just in a softer outfit. Passing the boundaries test doesn't mean being harsh or dramatic, it means being calmly, unapologetically clear about what has to be different this time for you to stay. It sounds like, I care about you. And if we're rebuilding, I need us to define what this is. Or, I'm not comfortable being physically intimate again without knowing what we're actually doing. Or, if we're going to try, I need consistency, not just intense conversations on random nights. You're not issuing threats, you're stating terms. You are telling your own nervous system, as much as you're telling them, that you refuse to live in emotional limbo again. A growth-ready avoidant might flinch when they hear that, because commitment and structure are scary to them, but if they genuinely want a future with you, your boundaries become a map, not a wall. They may ask for time, they may move slowly, but you'll see effort, more transparency, real conversations about what went wrong, concrete changes in how they communicate around space and conflict. They start earning back trust instead of expecting you to hand it over, because you're nostalgic. A stuck avoidant, on the other hand, will push against your boundaries in subtle ways. They might call you too serious or too much for wanting definition. They might dodge direct questions with, let's just see how it goes. While still enjoying the benefits of closeness, they might pull back the moment you stop being endlessly flexible. That reaction is not your cue to lower your standards. It's your proof that they were never coming back to build something new, only to reoccupy the emotional space you held open for them. The boundaries test, at its core, is not just about what they do, it's about who you decide to be this time. Are you the version of yourself who will accept half commitment and call it hope, or the version who believes so deeply in your own worth that you would rather risk losing them than relive a relationship that slowly erases you? Ladies and gentlemen, the final warning in all of this is the one most people never see until they're broken for the second time. These silent tests aren't just about whether your avoidant ex comes back. They're about whether you have actually changed enough not to lose yourself if they do. Everyone wants to know, will they return? Will they text? Will they regret? But the real question that decides your future is different. It's, when they reappear, who will I be this time? Because the tests they're running on you are the same tests life is running through them on your soul. Think about everything you've already walked through. The distance test showed you how you behave when someone you love pulls away. Do you turn into a version of yourself you don't even recognize, begging, bargaining, abandoning your routines and your needs just to feel a little less abandoned? The no-contact window revealed whether you can hurt and still keep living, or whether you disappear into the grief and make their absence your entire identity. The soft contact test exposed how fast you hand your heart back for a crumb of attention. How willing you are to pretend the pain didn't happen just to keep the peace. The boundaries test brought you face to face with your deepest pattern. Will you let someone have full access to your heart without giving you full safety in return? Every one of those moments didn't just show you who they are, they showed you who you are under pressure. The sixth keynote is this: if they come back, and you are still the same version of yourself that accepted confusion as love the first time, you are not getting a second chance at a new story. You are getting a second round of the same lesson. And this time it usually hurts more, because you knew better and went anyway. Growth is not proven by how much you understand their trauma. Growth is proven by how differently you behave when the cycle offers you another ride. You can quote attachment theory, you can explain their childhood, you can empathize with their nervous system. But if, at the end of the day, you still abandon your boundaries, overfunction emotionally, and accept uncertainty as the price of admission, your mind has grown but your patterns have not. This is where self-respect stops being a slogan and starts becoming a razor-sharp filter. When they resurface, when those 3 silent tests appear one by one, you are the one being given a choice. Will you use everything you've learned to protect your future? Or will you use your insight as an excuse to stay in something that still starves your self-worth? Passing these tests for you looks very different than passing them for them. When you pass them for them, you try to behave in whatever way you think will make them feel safe enough to stay. You regulate, but secretly you're performing regulation to keep them. You set boundaries, but you don't actually stick to them if they pull away. You answer slowly, act busy, seem calm, but inside you're still letting their responses dictate your value. When you pass them for you, everything shifts. You regulate because your nervous system matters, not because it will impress them. You maintain no contact or low contact because you know being dragged back in too fast will reopen wounds that haven't fully healed, not because you're trying to make them chase. You respond to soft contact with warmth and restraint because you will not let your heart sprint for anyone who hasn't earned that level of access again. You hold your boundaries around clarity, consistency, and commitment because that is the minimum your future requires, not a trick to force theirs. The truth is, their tests end up revealing something very simple. Can you love someone and still choose yourself? Can you feel the old pull and still honor the new standards? Can you want them back and still be willing to walk away if what they're offering is the same love that almost destroyed you the first time? If the answer is no, then it almost doesn't matter what they do. You will keep bending yourself into versions that fit their fear, shrinking your needs to avoid scaring them, going quiet whenever your heart wants clarity. You will keep living as a supporting character in a story where their comfort is the main plot. But if the answer is yes, everything becomes clearer. You can pick up the phone, answer the message, meet for coffee, and still know that this time you are not on trial. You are not there to prove you're safe enough, patient enough, understanding enough. You are there as a whole person with a healed spine and a soft heart. You can listen, you can feel, you can remember the good, you can even forgive. But you do not demote yourself back into the role of someone who will accept confusion as long as it comes with connection. Their return becomes information, not salvation. The final warning is simple and unforgiving. If they come back and you still treat their presence like oxygen, you will suffocate yourself again. These 3 silent tests are not just their way of deciding if it's safe to love you. They are your way of deciding if it's safe to love them again without losing yourself. And the moment you choose to pass them for your own soul, whether they stay or go, you finally win the only thing you were really looking for underneath all of this chaos: your peace, your power, and a love story that doesn't require you to abandon who you are just to keep someone who's unsure if they can hold you.